Well, they say that a photo is worth 1,000 words, and this photo here might at least be worth a few £100. And I'll tell you what, when the photos came out of James Harden down in Houston, you're hearing about him going down to Vegas, partying, doing this, doing that, and you're like, wow, this guy really let himself go. And then he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets, and we all got played. And I'll tell you what, I mean, the people out there that want to say, hey, he was bloated. These are athletes. They can lose weight. This dude did not lose 80 pounds overnight.
No.
And I'll tell you what, just the fact that he was willing to go to those extremes and wear a fat suit during warm-ups, which he totally did, to get out of Houston, you got to give him props.
Yeah, it's one of those, man, where, I'm always a little indifferent when an athlete's forcing their way out of a location, but I'm going to give him props in the sense that we've never seen this move. Give him props for his ingenuity here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a creative way to get out. We all saw the photo. I mean, the man looked like he put on at least 60 pounds, and 3 days later, he's back to the James Harden that we all know. So
he's a skinny James Harden in Brooklyn.
Yeah, he looks very fit. Obviously dropped a 30-point triple-double his first game in Brooklyn, so clearly didn't lose a step. And, we all knew the type of player Harden was. I guess maybe we just didn't know how bad he wanted out of Houston.
I think the conversation that's happening now is, was it his idea? Was it someone within his inner circle? I think it's pretty apparent, he's been pushing all year that he wants to go to Brooklyn.
Definitely.
And there's a guy in Brooklyn who has a little bit of a history of playing ball on playgrounds in suits in Kyrie. So I think that he took a page out of the Uncle Drew playbook to get his way over there. But I'll tell you what, Houston as a franchise has been really under scrutiny through this whole process. And I love this quote that came out from a Houston staffer. We've heard a little bit of remnants from Westbrook, different guys that have been a part of this franchise, Chris Paul. But this quote from a Houston staffer said, "Nothing ever starts on time. The plane is always late. The bus is never on time. It's just an organized AAU team." And I'll tell you what, pretty basic organizational fundamentals would be starting things on time.
Yeah.
And basically what people have been saying is that James Harden has been allowed to do whatever he wants, get away with whatever he wants his entire time there.
Definitely.
You can't expect him now to, come and listen to what you have to say. And so I do think that there are some fundamental issues going on there.
Absolutely.
It reminds me a little bit of the story that came out of Golden State, in terms of the plane never leaves late.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard this one, but Golden State a couple years ago, Clay, Steph were at the arena after the game hanging out with Drake. And team plane was going to head to Los Angeles to play the Lakers. No Steph, no Clay. So the booking manager for the Warriors calls Steph and says, "Hey, dude, where are you at? Like, plane's leaving." And Steve Kerr had implemented that, hey, if you're late to practice, you're late to the plane, it's a $500 fine. Yep. Steph says, "My bad, we're on the way," hops in the car, and who do they have with them but Drake? So they go to get on the plane, and Kerr says, "Hey," because they let one or two guests a year fly with players back then. And Kerr said, "All right, pay up, you got your $500 fine." Steph pays his, Clay pays his, Drake starts walking on the plane, and Kerr says, $500, you're late. What's Drake do? He pulls out 5 hundos and says, "Here you go," pays the fine. So I just think you look at an organization like the Warriors, first-class organization, just to think that there is a NBA team being ran as a organized AAU team is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a professional athlete, but even then, 10 minutes early is on time, right? That's the way you operate if you're in a professional setting. It just makes sense. So to see the Houston Rockets be ran the way they are, it's really mind-boggling that a professional organization would handle themselves that way. And it makes you think, too, because the talent that Houston has had over the last few years, it really is unquestionable. I mean, you've had Chris Paul come through there. Of course, you've got James Harden. I mean, you've had a number of
Dwight Howard experiment back in the day.
Dwight Howard. I mean, they've had a number of great players. They had the talent to win championships. I mean, there were a couple years where they were looking like the favorite to win the championship for stretches throughout the season. And it just never happened. And now, you have a little bit more knowledge of the organization. And I think anybody knows the first step to winning a championship is a well-ran organization. I can't remember the last professional sports team I've seen win a championship that's been a poor organization. It just doesn't happen. It takes a good team and it takes a good organization. So for Houston now, I mean, things are coming full circle. They've now hit the full reset button here with this trade. And now they've got the pieces and the draft capital over the next few years to build a team. Now the question is, can the organization keep up with the team?
I just want to know what's in the water down in Houston. You've got, James Harden wanting out. He finally got his wish. You've got Deshaun Watson wanting out of the Texans for very valid reasons. Who knows? I'm not going to go into the whole garbage of, the Houston Astros and what may have happened there, but really wacky things going on down in Houston. I just think if you look at the trade, I think it makes the Brooklyn Nets worse. I really do. I think that this is a great 2K team. I'll tell you what, if you're hopping online to play someone and they've got the Nets, it's not going to be a whole lot of fun for you. But I'm not so sure that this works. I think you look at the East, which is obviously not the stronger of the two conferences right now.
Sure.
And, Miami's solid. Milwaukee's going to be in the conversation as long as Giannis is there, which will be a long time now. Philadelphia, Boston. You've got good teams in the East. And I think if you're the Nets, congratulations. You just got a top 5 seed in the East. I think that's really as high as you can go right now. And you know what? Do they have a chance to make the NBA Finals? Yes. Mm-hmm. Do I think that they have a chance to beat, LeBron and AD in 7? No, I don't. But I'm not so sure that this actually makes you a better basketball team. And what I think is going to happen is we're going to see them underperform. I mean, God even knows if we're going to see Kyrie on the court for how often.
Seriously.
And so I think we're going to see a team that never gets what they wanted to out of this trade. And guess what? You just gave up 3 firsts. You just completely mortgaged your future. And Absolutely. You're going to have a very bad team a few years down the road.
Yeah, it's really tough anytime you're making a blockbuster move like this. And I also think it's tougher when you make that move in season, right? We've seen the Lakers structure, a superstar team. But I think what they've done is they've made their moves in the offseason. It gives them more options with free agents, signing trades even. It just gives you more options. Now, if you're the Nets, not only have you given up 3 first-round picks, you've done 4 first-round pick swaps as well with Houston. You've given up Jarrett Allen, who was probably the better of your 2 bigs and
young
definitely
stud.
The more promising as he's young and definitely, still had room to improve. You give up Taurean Prince, who is a great perimeter player, was a great defender for them as well. I just don't think this team has the depth now. You're asking DeAndre Jordan to be your starting center, 30 minutes a night guy. It's not something he's been in recent years. He's been that big off the bench who has been very good in that role. But this isn't the same DeAndre Jordan that was back in Lob City with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. It's just you've really put everything into 3 players, and it's almost like we've seen the Nets do this before. If you remember when they gave up everything to bring in Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, they thought they were putting something together, and it never worked out for them. And once those players left, the Nets were the worst team in the league for a good 3-year stretch, or one of the worst teams for a good 3-year stretch. And it looks like we're seeing a second coming of that.
I totally had forgotten about that entire scenario until we were kind of pre-gaming for today's show. History does repeat itself, and it's insane how franchises over and over they'll just do the same thing. And I'll tell you what, this story just gets weirder and weirder is now we're finding out that this trade may have actually potentially saved someone's life.
Yeah, Karis LeVert, obviously a part of this trade. A big player for Brooklyn. That I didn't even mention that, obviously, when we talked about who left Brooklyn. But he was a big player for them as well. Great scorer off the bench, facilitator. He gets shipped to Houston. Houston immediately turns around and sends him to Indiana for Oladipo. And now we hear it comes out that Karis LeVert is out indefinitely as they found a mass on his kidney. So, in terms of if you're a Pacers fan, you were excited about having a great shooting guard come in to replace Oladipo, who wanted out. But set fandom aside, let's focus on the fact that, this could potentially be huge in terms of his health. First things come first is, of course, getting Karis LeVert healthy. We hope we see him on the court, but hopefully that turns out to not be anything significant. but something that never would have came up had this trade not happened.
Yeah, like you said, our first worry is that he gets healthy. Once he does, I really do think that Pacer fans are going to be really thrilled with what they get out of this kid.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a really nice piece to have with Sabonis up
Brogdon,
there.
yeah.
So this whole story, like we said, gets weirder and weirder. James Harden, congratulations to you. You got your wish. You may have taken a page out of Kyrie's playbook or maybe Eddie Murphy's
Uncle
playbook.
Drew. Yeah.
But you got your wish, and we'll see if it works out for the Brooklyn Nets as the NBA season goes on.